What happens when a prince loses his cool in just 49 seconds on live television? A complete meltdown, a verbal beatdown from the host, and an exit so dramatic that the studio audience gasped in unison. Last night on Greg Gutfeld's show, Prince Harry walked into what should have been a simple conversation and walked out in absolute disgrace after one of the most explosive confrontations ever captured on camera. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing the royal family's darkest scandals, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The studio lights were hot last night as Prince Harry made his way onto the set of Greg Gutfeld's late-night show. The audience clapped politely as Harry settled into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket and flashing that signature smile that's been plastered across tabloids for years. Gutfeld, known for his no-nonsense approach and razor-sharp wit, sat across from him with a stack of note cards and an expression that suggested this wasn't going to be the puff-piece interview Harry might have expected. "Prince Harry, welcome to the show," Gutfeld began, his tone already carrying an edge that made a few audience members shift in their seats. "Thanks for joining us tonight. I know you're here to talk about your latest ventures, your charitable work, all that good stuff. But I've got to be honest with you, there's an elephant in the room, and I think America wants to know about it." Harry's smile faltered for just a moment, barely noticeable unless you were really watching. "Sure, Greg. What's on your mind?" Gutfeld leaned forward, his eyes locked on his guest. "You've spent years now talking about privacy, about wanting to protect your family, about the media being intrusive. Yet you've done Netflix documentaries, written a best-selling memoir where you shared incredibly private details about your family, done interview after interview. Help me understand how that works, because to a lot of people, it looks like you want privacy when it's convenient, and publicity when there's a paycheck involved." The audience went silent. This wasn't the gentle setup question most talk show guests receive. This was a direct shot across the bow, and everyone in the studio knew it. Harry's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization, Greg. We've been very clear about the kind of privacy we're seeking. We're talking about the harassment, the lies, the invasive photography that puts our security at risk." Right, Gutfeld interrupted, nodding slowly. "But you also talked about private conversations with your father, private conversations with your brother, intimate details about your wife, your personal life, things that happened behind closed doors in the palace. You put all of that out there for the world to consume. So when you say you want privacy, what you really mean is you want control over the narrative. Isn't that more accurate?" Harry's face flushed slightly. "No, that's not what I mean at all. We shared our truth, our experiences, because we were being lied about constantly. The British press was destroying our reputation, making up stories, twisting everything we did." Gutfeld picked up one of his note cards, glancing at it briefly before looking back at Harry. "Let's talk about that. You've blamed the British press for a lot of your problems. But here's what I find interesting. The palace, your family, they follow this old rule about never complaining, never explaining. They don't respond to rumors. They don't engage with tabloid nonsense. Yet somehow, they maintain their dignity and their standing. You've done the opposite. You've responded to everything, explained everything, complained about everything. And your reputation has only gotten worse. Don't you think there might be a lesson there?" The temperature in the studio seemed to rise. Harry shifted in his seat, his hands gripping the armrests a little tighter. "With all due respect, Greg, you don't know what it's like to have the entire British establishment against you. You don't know what it's like to watch your wife be torn apart by racist press coverage while your family does nothing to protect her." "Racist press coverage?" Gutfeld repeated, raising an eyebrow. "See, that's become your go-to explanation for any criticism. Anyone who questions you, anyone who disagrees with your choices, they're racist or they're part of some conspiracy. But I've seen the coverage, Harry. A lot of it was critical, sure, but critical isn't the same as racist. You can't just slap that label on everything that hurts your feelings." Harry's composure was starting to crack. "You're American. You don't understand the British press. You don't understand the coded language they use, the dog whistles. When they called Meghan exotic, or talked about her background constantly, that was absolutely racism. Okay, some of that coverage crossed lines. I'll give you that," Gutfeld conceded. But what about the legitimate criticism? What about when people questioned your massive carbon footprint while you lecture everyone else about climate change? What about when you accepted millions from Spotify and then didn't deliver the content you promised? What about when you wore a Nazi uniform to a party? Were all of those racist attacks too? Or were those just you making bad decisions? The audience stirred. This was getting heated fast. Harry's face was now noticeably red. I apologized for the Nazi costume 20 years ago. I was young and stupid. As for the rest, you're cherry-picking. You're doing exactly what the tabloids do, taking things out of context to paint me in the worst possible light. Gutfeld laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm cherry-picking? Harry, you wrote an entire book cherry-picking moments from your life to justify your decisions. You went on Oprah and made serious allegations about your family, including claiming someone made racist comments about your son's skin color. Then, when pressed for details, you backtracked. You threw out this explosive accusation that damaged your family's reputation worldwide, but you won't actually tell us who said it or the full context of the conversation. That's not cherry-picking? We never backtracked, Harry shot back, his voice rising for the first time. We were very clear about what happened, and the fact that you're defending those comments says everything about where you stand. I'm not defending anything, Gutfeld replied, his own voice getting sharper. I'm asking for specifics. You made an incendiary claim. You can't just drop a bomb like that and then hide behind vague statements. Either it happened the way you implied, or it didn't. Which is it? Harry stood up slightly in his chair before sitting back down, clearly agitated. This is exactly the kind of ambush interview I was warned about. I came here in good faith to talk about my work, and instead you're trying to tear me down. Gutfeld held up his hands. I'm asking you questions that millions of people want answers to. That's not an ambush, that's journalism. You've spent years controlling your message through friendly interviewers who lob you softball questions. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've gotten so used to people agreeing with everything you say that you can't handle actual scrutiny anymore. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. Audience members were exchanging glances, unsure whether to be entertained or uncomfortable. Harry pointed a finger at Gutfeld. You know what? This is bullshit. You brought me on here just to attack me, to score points with your audience by dunking on the guy who left the royal family. Well, congratulations, you're getting your viral moment. Hey, watch the language, we're on television, Gutfeld said, though his smile suggested he was enjoying this. And nobody's dunking on you, Harry. I'm just asking you to explain the contradictions in your story. You can't play the victim forever, while also cashing in on your royal connections. You can't demand privacy while selling your family's secrets. You can't call for compassion and understanding while trashing your relatives on international television. I didn't trash anyone. Harry's voice was loud now, echoing through the studio. I told my truth. I shared my experience. And if that makes my family uncomfortable, maybe they should reflect on why their behavior was so bad that I felt the need to talk about it publicly. Gutfeld leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Your truth. There's that phrase again. Here's the thing about truth, Harry. Real truth is objective. It's not my truth or your truth. It's just truth. When you say, my truth, what you really mean is, my version of events, which may or may not align with what actually happened. Your brother, your father, they have their version too. But you've decided that only your perspective matters. Only your feelings count. That's not fair, Harry protested. They have the entire palace machinery behind them. They have the press in their pocket. They have the power and the resources to tell their side anytime they want. Meghan and I had nothing. We had to fight just to be heard. You had nothing? Gutfeld's voice dripped with disbelief. Harry, you're worth tens of millions of dollars. You have a mansion in California. You've signed deals worth over $100 million with Netflix and Spotify. You have celebrity friends, powerful connections, and a platform that most people could only dream of. Stop acting like you're some kind of oppressed underdog. You're not David fighting Goliath. You're just a privileged guy who didn't like the rules of his privileged life. So you ran away, and now you're trying to justify it. Harry was on his feet now, his face flushed with anger. You don't know anything about what we went through. You weren't there when Meghan was having suicidal thoughts, and the institution refused to help her. You weren't there when my family threw us to the wolves to protect themselves. You sit here in your comfortable studio, judging me, when you have no idea what it's like to live in that system." The audience was completely silent now, transfixed by the meltdown happening in front of them. Gutfeld remained seated, his voice calm but cutting. "You're right. I wasn't there. Neither was anyone else. So all we have is your word that it happened exactly the way you say it did. And here's the problem, Harry. Your credibility isn't great. You've changed your story multiple times. First, you said you didn't cooperate with the authors of that biography about you. Then evidence came out that you did. You said you just wanted to step back from royal duties, then you signed massive commercial deals immediately. You said you wanted a private life, then you did multiple tell-all interviews. At what point do people get to say, hey, maybe this guy isn't being completely honest with us? I have been nothing but honest, Harry shouted. Everything I've said is the truth. Just because you don't want to believe it doesn't make it false. Lower your voice, Gutfeld said firmly. This is my show, and you don't get to yell at me on my show. Harry's hands were shaking. This is unbelievable. I came here thinking we could have an actual conversation, but instead you've just spent the entire time attacking my character, questioning my integrity, making me out to be some kind of liar or con artist. Gutfeld shook his head. I'm not attacking your character, Harry. I'm questioning your actions and your contradictions. There's a difference. You've made yourself a public figure. You've profited enormously from sharing your story. That means you open yourself up to criticism and scrutiny. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't have written the book or done the Netflix series or any of it. So I'm just supposed to stay silent? Harry's voice cracked slightly. Let people say whatever they want about me and my wife? Let the lies spread unchecked? No, Gutfeld replied. But there's a middle ground between staying silent and doing what you've done. You could have lived your life quietly in California. You could have done your charity work without constantly bringing up your family drama. You could have moved on. But instead, you keep picking at the wound. You keep bringing it up in every interview, every public appearance. And then you act surprised when people criticize you for it. Harry was pacing now, unable to stand still. This is such garbage. You know what the real problem is? The real problem is that I left. I broke the mold. I refused to just sit there and take it like every royal before me. And that terrifies people like you, because it shows that the whole system is optional. Nobody has to bow and scrape to an outdated institution. We can make our own choices. Oh, please, Gutfeld scoffed. You didn't break any mold, Harry. You had a temper tantrum when you didn't get your way. And you've been throwing that same tantrum for years now. You wanted to be half in, half out of the royal family. You wanted the perks and the status without the responsibilities. When they said no, you threw a fit and ran to California. And you've been cashing in on your family name ever since, while simultaneously trashing that same family. You can dress it up in the language of liberation and breaking cycles all you want, but at the end of the day, you look like a spoiled brat who couldn't cut it. The audience gasped. This had crossed from tough interview into full-blown confrontation territory. Harry stopped pacing and stared at Gutfeld, his chest heaving. How dare you? How dare you call me spoiled when you know nothing about the trauma I've experienced, the loss I've suffered, the hell I've been through? Your mother, Gutfeld said quietly. I know you lost your mother tragically, and I'm truly sorry for that. Nobody should have to go through what you went through as a child. But Harry, you're not a child anymore. You're a grown man in your 40s. At some point, you have to stop using your trauma as an excuse for your behavior. Lots of people experience terrible loss and tragedy, and they don't spend decades blaming everyone else for their problems. Harry's voice was shaking now. You're bringing up my mother? You're going to sit there and use my mother's death to score points in an argument? That's low, even for you. I'm not using anything, Gutfeld responded. You're the one who brings up your mother constantly. You wrote about her extensively in your book. You talk about her in interviews. You've made her tragedy part of your public narrative. So, when you use your childhood trauma to justify your current choices, yeah, I'm going to address it. Because it's been almost 30 years, Harry. At what point does it stop being an explanation and start being an excuse? Harry grabbed his microphone and yanked it off his lapel, nearly ripping his jacket in the process. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. I don't have to be disrespected like this. Gutfeld remained calm. You're welcome to leave anytime you want. But answer me this first. Why did you really come on this show? Did you actually think I was going to go easy on you? Did you think you could just charm your way through another interview where everyone nods along with your victimhood story? Because if that's what you wanted, you picked the wrong show. I came on because I was told we would have a respectful conversation about my work and my life, Harry said through gritted teeth. Instead, you've spent 40 minutes trying to humiliate me on national television. I've spent 40 minutes asking you questions you don't want to answer, Gutfeld corrected. That's not humiliation. That's accountability. You've gotten away with controlling the narrative for years because most interviewers are too scared or too starstruck to push back. Well, I'm not scared of you, Harry. You're not royalty in America. Here, you're just another celebrity trying to stay relevant. Harry's face contorted with rage. Just another celebrity? My family has 1,000 years of history. We've shaped nations. We've led armies. What the hell have you done with your life except sit behind a desk and mock people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world? Gutfeld smiled. There it is. The royal arrogance. My family shaped nations. Harry, your family was born into privilege and wealth they did nothing to earn. They waved at people from balconies and cut ribbons at hospital openings. That's not shaping nations. That's being a mascot. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Monarchies are weird, but whatever. The problem is you've spent years pretending you're better than all that you're different, that you're just a regular guy who wants to live a normal life. But the second someone challenges you, out comes the "don't you know who I am" attitude. You can't have it both ways. I never said I was better than anyone, Harry shouted. I just wanted to be treated with basic human decency. I wanted my wife to be protected from racist abuse. I wanted my son to grow up without cameras in his face every damn day. Is that too much to ask? No, it's not too much to ask, Gutfeld agreed. But then you put your son on a Netflix documentary. You talked about him in your book. You used him as part of your brand. So clearly the cameras are fine when you're the one controlling them and profiting from them. Harry threw his hands up in the air. Every single thing I say, you twist it. Every choice I make, you find a way to make it sound terrible. There's no winning with people like you. People like me? Gutfeld leaned forward. You mean people who don't automatically bow down to your victimhood narrative? People who think actions should have consequences? People who notice when someone's words don't match their behavior? Yeah, I guess there's no winning with people like me if you're trying to play both sides of the fence. Harry grabbed his phone from his pocket, his hands still shaking. I'm done. This interview is over. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted anymore. Nobody's stopping you, Gutfeld said, gesturing toward the exit. The door's right there. Harry stood up fully now, ripping off the last of his microphone equipment and throwing it on the chair. You're a hack, you know that? You're a bully with a television show who gets off on tearing people down. This is exactly the kind of toxic media culture that destroyed my mother and tried to destroy my wife. You should be ashamed of yourself. Gutfeld's expression didn't change. I sleep just fine at night, Harry. Can you say the same? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the one who can't handle the consequences of your choices. You wanted to be free from the royal family? Fine. But freedom means you don't get special treatment anymore. Freedom means people can criticize you without it being an act of treason or racism or whatever excuse you want to use this week. Harry was walking toward the exit now, his face red with rage and humiliation. Go to hell, Greg. You and everyone who thinks like you can go straight to hell. The studio was absolutely silent except for Harry's footsteps and heavy breathing. Gutfeld called after him. Thanks for coming on the show, Your Majesty. This has been enlightening. Harry spun around one last time. You know what your problem is? You're jealous. You're a nobody who wishes he had the life I was born into. So you sit there and tear me down to make yourself feel better. Well, guess what? No matter what you say, no matter how you try to humiliate me, I'm still Prince Harry. I'm still royalty. And you're still just a talk show host who'll be forgotten 5 minutes after you retire. Gutfeld laughed out loud at that. If that's what you need to tell yourself to feel better, go for it. But just so we're clear, I don't want your life, Harry. I don't want to be estranged from my family. I don't want my dirty laundry aired on Netflix. I don't want to be known as the guy who betrayed his brother and disappointed his grandmother in her final years. So yeah, you keep your royal title. I'll take my anonymous, boring, regular life any day of the week." The mention of his grandmother seemed to hit Harry like a physical blow. His face went pale, then red again almost immediately. "Don't you dare talk about my grandmother. Don't you dare speak her name. You talked about her plenty in your book," Gutfeld pointed out. "You shared private conversations with her. You revealed things she told you in confidence. But now suddenly she's off limits? Make it make sense, Harry." Harry's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "That was different. I loved her. I honored her. Everything I said about her was respectful." "Was it respectful to reveal private family conversations right after she died?" Gutfeld asked. "Was it respectful to do your Oprah interview while she was in the hospital? Was it respectful to make her final years on Earth filled with family drama that you escalated at every turn? Because to a lot of people, that looked like the opposite of respect." Harry looked like he might charge at Gutfeld for a moment. Security guards in the wing shifted, ready to move if needed, but instead, Harry just shook his head slowly, his eyes filled with rage and unshed tears. "You're a piece of shit," Harry said quietly. "A real piece of shit." Then he turned and walked straight off the set, ignoring the producers trying to talk to him, ignoring the audience staring at him in shock, just heading straight for the exit with his head down and his fists clenched. The studio door slammed behind him with a bang that echoed through the silent space. Gutfeld turned to the camera, his expression neutral. "Well, that went well," he said dryly, and the audience, released from their tension, erupted into shocked laughter and applause. The confrontation was over. Prince Harry had walked off the set in disgrace, unable to defend himself against the tough questions and unwilling to face the contradictions in his story. It was a disaster for his public image and a moment that would be replayed and analyzed for weeks to come. The prince who wanted respect had instead found himself exposed, defensive, and ultimately retreating from the battle he'd started.